Awake. Shake dreams from your hair, my pretty child, my sweet one. Choose the day and choose the sign of your day, the day's divinity. First thing you see. A vast, radiant beach and a cool, jeweled moon. Couples naked race down by its quiet side. And we laugh like soft, mad children, smug in the woolly cotton brains of infancy. The music and voices are all around us.
Hello, I love you, won't you tell me your name? Hello, I love you.
James Douglas Morrison was born on December 8, 1943. He was raised in a military family. One day when he was a child, he witnessed a car crash involving Native Americans. He said that the soul of one of the dying Native Americans leapt into his body. This incident would serve as a reason behind his behavior and actions later on in life. Jim started writing when he was in adolescent years and going into high school. He graduated from George Washington High School in Alexandria, Virginia in 1961. Morrison was influenced by a number of philosophers and poets. One of them was Friedrich Nietzsche, whose views on aesthetics, morality, and the Napoleon and Dionysus duality would appear in Jim's conversations, poetry, and songs. He was also influenced by Jack Kerouac, Allen Ginsberg, Lawrence Ferlinghetti, Charles Baudelaire, and Molière.
In 1969, Morrison self-published 2 volumes of poetry entitled The Lords, Notes on Vision, and The New Creatures. The Lords consisted brief descriptions of places, people, events, and Morrison's thoughts about cinema. The New Creatures poems are more poetic in structure, feel, and appearance. These 2 volumes were later combined into one novel entitled The Lords and the New Creatures. These were the only known poems published during Jim's lifetime. Guess what? Jim also befriended Michael McClure. McClure wrote the afterword of Jerry Hopkins' biography of Morrison, No One Gets Out of Here Alive. Jim and Michael collaborated on a number of unmade film projects, including a film version of McClure's play, The Beard. Jim would have played Billy the Kid.
In 1965, Jim graduated from UCLA Film School. After that, he started living on someone's rooftop and eating only canned beans and doing LSD for months. He later met up with Ray Manzarek, who he went to UCLA with. One day, Ray was meditating on the beach in Venice, and Jim accidentally stumbled upon him. Jim said he had been writing poems and songs. He was visioning a rock and roll concert in his head. Ray asked him to sing a song. Jim sung Moonlight Drive.
Let's swim to the moon, let's climb through the tide, penetrate the evening that the city sleeps too high.
Ray was so impressed with Jim's poetic lyrics that he suggested starting a band. They formed The Doors. Robbie Krieger and John Densmore also joined later. The Doors took their name from the title of Aldous Huxley's book, The Doors of Perception, which is actually a reference from William Blake's poem, The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, in which Blake wrote, "If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite." Jim used this quote to support his reasoning of taking mind-expanding drugs to be able to see the truth. During that time in the 60s, America was at war, not just in Vietnam, but as a society. There was a war between the hip and the non-hip, the heads and the straights, the psychedelics and the squares, and that was basically the battle, the establishment against the hippies. The 60s also had flower power bands like the Beatles, which had songs like All You Need Is Love. However, in 1967, the Beatles didn't really have a major cutout. The Doors' albums were number 1. These bands were necessary during the counterculture movement because it provided events for people around the nation to come together to experience something better than war and violence which was going on overseas. Jim's haunting poetic lyrics led to a new breed of music during that time called psychedelic rock, which served as an escape from reality and authority, and have a more religious experience that would expand the mind. A good example of Jim's haunting poetic lyrics is the song, The End. In the song, Jim Morrison reenacts a bit of Greek drama. He specifically reenacts Oedipus. For those of you who don't know the Oedipus story, Oedipus unknowingly killed his father and had sex with his mother. Morrison has a verse dedicated to that.
Father, yes, son, I want to kill you. Mother,
Jim became more comfortable performing in front of large audiences after the Sullivan performance. He figured he would consider himself as an entertainer. He started improvising poems during live performances as the rest of the band would keep the beat. Jim got a little too carried away, however. Before each performance, he would get high, so the audience were now coming to watch Jim go crazy on stage.
something like that.
Don't overblow, Jim. You got a long way to go.
Why not?
With a what?
In 1968, the Doors begin recording The Soft Parade. Paul Rothchild produces, with Bruce Botnick as his engineer. Jim has begun coming into the studio, drunk or high. Robbie writes half the songs on Soft Parade. And for the first time, he and Jim separate their writing credits.
We're in Africa. Before you slip into unconsciousness, I'd like to have another kiss.
The band became very famous quickly. Ray, Robbie, and John were buying houses and cars with all the money the band made. Jim mostly booked rooms in cheap motels throughout his music career. Jim wasn't in the band for the money and fame. He was in it for the experience and to be a vessel of truth and knowledge for all of his listeners. Jim would later move to Paris, where he wanted to focus on his writing and get away from the music scene and the drugs and lifestyle that came with it. Jim lost the weight he had gained and started to get clean because he wanted to focus on his poetry until he relapsed on heroin. One morning he was found in the bathtub allegedly dying of a heart attack. No one will ever truly know, for no autopsy was performed and his casket was sealed shut. People to this day still go to his gravesite and mourn.
All right, thank you all for coming. Thank you for Jim. Thank you on behalf of Jim. God bless you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.